We're not right back on. Here we go. All right. Daryl Crittenden is going to give you a quick update on the proposed public fishing and crabbing path forward. We had a lot of conversation. We think there's a way to get one of your boards involved in this process and take a look at what we've got. So he's going to do that quickly.
Thank you, Mr. Manager. In September 2016, the Colonial Place Riverview Civic League requested the city rescind their ban on fishing and crabbing. The Civic League's request was met with opposition, and therefore we actually had to come up with a solution to actually make sure that, one, the neighborhood and communities were informed, and also to make sure that we were able to enhance public fishing throughout the city. At the request of the city manager, we decided that we would vet this through the commission, and the commission would actually examine public fishing spaces, actually look at expansion of public fishing, as well as come up with a process for these types of requests. The recommendations basically was to direct the commission to convene a work group, which we'll be doing this fall and winter. We'll have 2 public meetings, and then we hope that the commission will have a plan formulated by January, which we hope to bring to the city council in February for its approval.
So you've got a waterfront community with, frankly, very limited opportunities for public fishing and crabbing. And so the real task is, rather than looking at one specific thing, take a broader look, let that group take a look and see what can we come up with to bring back to you all in 6 months as a broader recommendation.
And in the interim, will the
Everything stays the way it is. Everything stays
will
as is. All right. Thank you, Mayor. Next item, John Sanderling is going to jump up, City Auditor is going to jump up and introduce Cheryl Zistros from KPMG, here to do lay out for you the process for our annual audit.
Good evening to everyone. As you're aware, we are in our audit cycle for our 2017 financial audit, and we have our external auditors here represented with Cheryl Zistros, who's the partner. She's going to come forward to give you the scope of the audit and timeline for the audit, so we'll receive her at this time.
Thank you, everyone. I'm glad to be back to speak to you again. As John mentioned, the purpose of our presentation today is to go over the required communications under professional standards associated with the planning and the preliminary phase of the audit, so that you have an idea of what we're going to focus on and how we've initially assessed our procedures and process, and have an opportunity, if you have any, to give us some input on anything that you might be concerned about that would impact the audit. So, oops, let's see if I got this right. Okay, so I won't go over the agenda. We'll just move straight into. Okay, so first, this is a chart that depicts our service team here for the City of Norfolk. Everybody on here, with the exception of one person, is the same as in the prior year. So we do bring a lot of continuity. I serve as the engagement partner for all of the engagements that we do for the City of Norfolk, which is both the city, the single audit, the schools, Economic Development Authority. The rest of the team tends to be different, as you move from place to place, just so we can facilitate getting the work done. This slide is just a summary of all of the services that we provide under our contract with the city for audit services. Obviously, first and foremost is an audit of the CAFR of the city, the large book that will come out later this fall or early winter. We also perform a single audit of the city's grants, including the schools, under the uniform guidance. That was new last year. There are a number of other reports that we issue, primarily as a result of the guidance from the Auditor of Public Accounts. We have some procedures that we perform on the canteen funds over at the sheriff on their behalf, and we issue a report. There's a report on the comparative cost form that gets accumulated with all the other localities in the state that we are involved in. And then we also provide for the Auditor of Public Accounts some assurance on the census data that goes into the Virginia Retirement System audits. There's a landfill agreed upon procedures report that we do that's also required by the state. Because of their revenue bonds, water and wastewater funds get their own separate audit reports. And then we also provide the letters of negative assurance on internal control and compliance under government auditing standards for all of the entities that we look at. This hasn't really changed much from prior years. Obviously, the areas where we have some of the most significant estimates in the financial statements are around the pension and post-retirement benefits. Over the next couple of years, we're going to have a new standard there, so more about that coming up. And then we also spend some time looking at the self-insurance consortium that was set up a couple of years ago and take a look at those actuarial liabilities also. You know, business risks, you know, but really similar to the past. You always have risks of losing funding from other governments, economic conditions, compliance with regulations. Significant classes of transactions, again, I mean, these are the key classes of transactions that the city processes. You've got the budget, obviously revenue generation, payroll, the purchase of other goods and services and the related procurement, capital assets, debt, and treasury. We will have a little more focus this year on payroll because of some of the things that happened over the winter where, you know, we will spend some time both looking at the process that the city went through to identify and correct those errors. And it will have somewhat of an impact on our risk assessment, and it definitely has an impact on the single audit, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. Yeah.
How do you determine, if you go back to one slide, in terms of economic risk and funds, the possible reduction of federal funds in particular, given the environment that we're in? How do you?
You know, what we're really looking for there, Andrea, is like what are you worried about, right? And how might that impact the actions that you take as an organization, and how might that impact risks, you know, in terms of how you might move forward with decisions on borrowing or spending or, you know, budgetary. So it's more of trying to assess and planning, you know, the sort of the tone at the top, the environment that the city is operating under, and what stresses in that environment that might actually impact at some point, you know, risks from a financial perspective. Yeah, so. Okay, so this slide deals with fraud risks, and the first kind of dark blue box kind of lays out what management's responsibilities are related to fraud, establishing an appropriate culture and controls. And then the next two boxes are kind of what the auditor does. And the first step is identification of any risks, and then trying to make sure, you know, that our audit procedures are designed to address those risks. Obviously, the purpose of an audit is not to detect fraud, it's to detect material errors in the financial statements, in the numbers that you present, but obviously sometimes fraud can result in those. So that's the context under which we look at it. And again, it's trying to set a framework. At this point in the presentation, for those of you that have been here before, I do always ask if there's anything you're concerned about with respect to fraud that we would need to know as we move forward with the audit. So anybody? Okay, well that's good. I threw in here just because over the last several years there have been an awful lot of new accounting pronouncements. I guess what I would say is that governmental financial statements year after year march closer and closer to what the private sector tries to present in some ways in terms of the measurement focus and the approaches that are taken, at least to the extent it's practical. This year, the only really significant one, the second two won't have much of an impact, is we will have some additional disclosures on tax abatement agreements. And the finance folks are still working on, there's a number of different choices in terms of how you go about doing that. And so we'll talk more about that when I come back after the statements are issued. The second box, June 30, 2018, that next year's audit will require us to implement the new OPEB standard, which is post-retirement health care and other benefits. And if you remember from those of you that were here the year or so ago, we put the pension liability on the books. Now we're going to put the post-retirement benefits on the books as well. Some of the changes that you all have made over the last few years have helped at least keep that liability from growing significantly, taking advantage of the exchanges and some of that with, but it will still be, a relatively impactful standard with respect to the financials, and will also take a lot of effort from your team in terms of pulling together the information to implement that. And we'll start with that this year a little bit, just making sure that we're ready because it is so significant. Okay, single audit is next. And you can see that we've listed up here the 6 grants on the city side that we're going to be looking at. Many of them are the human services grants, and then the last one, community investment, that's the new program that is building the school over near the Navy base. And so that is a very large grant that we'll be taking a look at. It'll probably flow through the audit this year and next year, and then not again.
Is that the grant coming from the federal government?
From the federal
to subsidize
government.
the building?
That's right.
Right.
That's right. We're working through that one because it's a little different since it's a custom agreement, in terms of the testing that we'll do. Obviously, we always try to maximize our ability to test things only once, to do tests in the single audit that help us in the regular audit, and we'll continue to do that. This year, there are 2 major programs at Norfolk Public Schools, in addition to the ones up above, which are the school breakfast and lunch program and then improving teacher quality. Because of the payroll issues last winter, we had a little bit different risk assessment that we had to go through this year, and because of that, you're seeing some grants being tested that were tested in the prior year as well, rather than larger grants have to be tested once every 3 years. So it is going to push us a little bit off schedule because we had to go back and revisit these, but because these grants have very significant amounts of hourly payroll in them, it was difficult to not assess them as having higher risk with the payroll issues that occurred. Another thing that's happened, although it's not affecting the scope of the audit very much this year because of the impact of the payroll, is in the middle of all that, the data collection form that gets filed with the federal government was filed late. So the city will be a high-risk auditee only because that form was filed late, which increases the scope of the audit for a couple of years. This go-round, I don't think the testing would have changed very much, even if we were not a high-risk auditee, because all of these programs had to be classified as high risk because of the payroll dollars that were in them. Yeah.
So are you saying when you said that you had to, you're going to re-audit some of the programs that you had previously audited before we went to the new payroll system? That's just to make sure that there's no discrepancies and that those hours were accounted for correctly? So a successful result would be that this new audit basically mirrors post payroll,
That's right.
mirrors pre-payroll.
Because we haven't had any findings, ever in these programs related to the actual payroll dollars that get charged to the federal government under the grant.
So we expect that there shouldn't be any
That's right.
change in that. That would be the,
That would be
Positive,
the outcome that we hope for
desired outcome,
as
okay.
we work through. And actually, we're pretty close. Like, we may have, yeah, like, I mean, what we really have to focus on is, you know, when the errors occurred, and then, you know, if you do timely reporting, they get reported, and then did they get corrected?
okay.
So, and if all that works out okay, then there won't be any findings, and we'll move on from there. So, but, you know, it does sort of, you know, mess up the grand plan, you know, in terms of how you cycle through these grants when, you know, you go back and retest some that you tested in the prior year. So, but we'll work through that. What? I think it was just an oversight, in turn, you know, where folks are really busy trying to make sure people are getting paid correctly and fix the errors, and, you know, the form slipped through the cracks by a few days. You have 30 days from the time the financial statements are issued to actually file the form with the Federal Clearinghouse.
And it was due during the same time period when we were
Yep.
trying to fix the errors of
That's
the
right.
payroll
That's right.
situation.
So I
Okay.
think the report was issued like December 20-ish,
Okay.
you know, 21, you know, and so, you know, it kind of put us right in the middle of all that. And it was just that very last step, you know, that didn't.
Has a
occur.
process been installed so that that won't happen again?
It should be easy for it to not happen again. I mean, you know, yeah, Christine. Yeah. Yeah, I think it'll be, it's certainly never happened before. But it was a very busy time, and, you know, a lot of other higher priorities at that point in terms of trying to make sure folks are getting paid correctly. So, timetable, we've been working through our planning over the last 2 or 3 months. Also working on testing, you know, some of the single audit programs, and the IT system test work. And we'll kick heavy into the financial statement field work in the, you know, beginning of October, with the goal of trying to issue by November 30. So hopefully we'll be back in December, and everything will be good. So,
Okay, Mr.
and this
Riddick.
is just our communication.
I'm sorry, Mr. Riddick.
You know, my concern to me when you bring it back to us, I'd like to know where we are in terms of our retirement system. At what level we're funded.
Sure.
With the last administration that pulled out, before they pulled out, we were given one number. And then I think the last time you were here, we were given a lower number. You know, we were given up in the upper 80s in terms of percentage of funding, but I think it's less than that. So I think it would be beneficial for us, not me.
Sure.
Be beneficial for us to know exactly where we are. And certainly, the markets could be unstable, and that could affect us. And so we really need to know where we are,
Right.
in my opinion.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I can definitely do that. I mean, one thing that happened with the implementation of the pension standard is that the calculation of that funded percentage moved into the accounting world and out of the actuarial world. And in the actuarial world, they smooth assets, like they take 3-4 year averages, you know, that tends to lessen the impact of the market. Where when the accountants do it, you know, we're going to look at what the number is on the balance sheet, divide it by the liability on the balance sheet, and that, you know, the way the reporting worked, there was a down year, you know, which over the last 2 has kind of turned back around. So, I mean, I think you'll see a little bit more. I mean, not, you know, I'm not talking huge numbers, but you are going to see a little bit more fluctuation because of the way the retirement liability is reported
Okay.
under the new standard.
Thank you.
So,
Andrea.
along those lines, and this is not, it's tangential to KPMG, but are we moving forward with the consulting firm who's gonna look at our retirement?
I've got a report from you from budget and planning on that, so
Okay.
yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Anything else I can answer? Or? Yeah.
Sound with you?
We'll be back.
Fine. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank
Cheryl,
you.
thank you. Mayor, members of council, our next presentation is going to be about Deputy City Manager Mike Goldsmith. And, you know, we talk a lot about regional activities and regional collaboration. And what I would submit to you is the public safety officials, collaboration is just part of their DNA. And it is what they do by the fact of who they are. And I'm really pleased with what you're going to hear tonight. Mike's got 3 guests with him. Chesapeake Deputy City Manager Bob Geis, Virginia Beach Deputy City Manager Steve Kober, and then Martin Colberth, who is the FBI Special Agent in charge of the Norfolk Field Office. And I think that's a pretty good message in and of itself, that we'll get 2 Deputy City Managers from adjacent cities. Norfolk, Virginia Beach, and Chesapeake are the 3 communities right now that have Deputy City Managers for public safety. And Mike's going to talk to you about some things that'll sort of remind you of why we've done that. But I'm really pleased with what they're doing and the path that we're going on. And the reality is it's a different world today, and a world with some really unique challenges, and we've seen that in other communities. And I want you to know kind of the path that we're going down, frankly, as a region.
All right, thank you, sir. Mayor, members of council, Mr. Manager, really excited to give this presentation. As Mr. Smith has said, he's already given the introductions of the folks that are here. So just to give you a little bit of what the overview is going to be for the presentation. I want to talk a little bit about what Regional Homeland Security is. We're going to talk about what makes Hampton Roads special in this arena. In other words, why are we attacking this in a regional method based on how we're constructed and the complex littoral environment that we live in. We're going to talk a little bit about threats. We're going to talk about challenges to regional response and what makes that difficult, particularly here. Talk about some events that have happened in other parts of the nation and what the challenges were to having a coordinated response to those serious events. And then we're going to cover the acronym up there, and I've been accused of using way too many of those as I've moved into the public safety role. But that stands for the Joint Counterterrorism Awareness Workshop that Chesapeake was good enough to host for the region. A lot of information came out of that, and Chief Cover is going to talk about some of the lessons learned from that event and how we move forward from there. And then I'm going to talk about at the close about a new partner that we've got that's going to take us even further forward as we move through. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Captain Geis.
Well, I've got the easy part. I get to just tell you what you probably already know, is that here in the Hampton Roads area, we are in fact unique in the world. You know, we are at a place in our nation and really in the world that's unique. We have not only an international presence, we have a fast-growing region, but we have a lot of interdependencies, and we'll talk about that. We also are a very festive community, right? Every city in the South Hampton Roads area has some large festival, and it draws international visitors and visitors from all over the United States. In fact, this weekend, NAS Oceana, my old base, is hosting its annual air show, and that typically brings in over 250,000 people over the weekend. So we draw a lot of visitors, and we believe that public safety, taking care of our citizens and our visitors that come in is really the most important part that government has. So why is that important? Well, as you know, our region is a driver. We have an economic driver in the port as well as a huge military presence. Our region is unique in that its interdependency with the military is widespread. There's a lot of talk about trying to get away from that dependency, but the fact is it exists today. We have the largest concentration of military, of the U.S. military anywhere in the country. You know, we're the home of the world's largest naval base. Captain Doug Beaver's here and represents the city on that. And it supports readiness of the entire United States Atlantic Fleet. It is a huge driver of the economy and employment. And NAS Oceana, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, it has 300 tactical jets that are home based there as well. And we have nearly a quarter of the nation's active duty military that live here in the region. We also have a third of the Navy's shipbuilding and ship repair capacity, so huge presence. The Department of Defense spending supports over 40% of our regional employment, and we have over 8,000 service members that transition out of the military each year here in the Hampton Roads area. So we have a huge workforce, a very capable workforce that comes into our community as civilians ready to go to work. We also, of course, have the third largest commercial port on the East Coast, and it's continued to grow here in the near term. In Norfolk hosts the Port of Virginia's Norfolk International Terminal, one of the region's most significant economic assets, and it makes us an integral member of the international community. The Port of Virginia, as you all know, handles over 81 million tons of cargo, generates $60 billion of economic activity, and provides employment for port-related activities and industries for over 343,000 Virginians. And of course, last but not least, Norfolk Southern is a huge regional asset that has a national footprint. And as I said, it's vital that we support and protect this critical infrastructure. Martin?
Okay, so the threats that are here, obviously, everybody focuses on, from my standpoint, the terrorism part, right? That's on top of everybody's list. But as you can see, other things that we are involved in from a federal level would happen with the natural threats that are here. So what's happening in Houston and in Florida right now, the FBI and the other contingencies, federal contingencies are out there, are helping support the effort to mitigate the threats that are out there from that. So a lot of us, when we started talking about this, we start talking about, how does the federal government, how does the FBI play in this? And we want to run the range across the board and be a full partner with all the law enforcement and other first responders here. So, like I said, I could belabor the IEDs, the active shooters, and the homegrown violent extremists. We've had an incident of each of those in my 11 months that we've been here, right? We've arrested 2 HVEs in the local area. We've had active shooters in situations, mostly in small things, and we've been able to disrupt some IEDs and manufacturing of that. So again, with those types of threats that are out there. The other one that I don't want to overstate or understate is the cyber threat, which is something that's out there and we're all aware of. Bob mentioned all the different things that we have in this AOR. My AOR, for me, runs all the way to James City County, all the way up the Eastern Shore, and then out past Isle of Wight on the south side. So we have a lot of stuff that we have to take care of. And as I drive past most of this stuff every night, I go, oh, that's a problem. Oh, that's a problem. So, and just to add to some of the other stuff that I have here is, the 2 NASA sites, one being a launch site up on the Eastern Shore, which is a huge concern for me as well. And then we got NSA, CIA, we have all the military again. So challenges across the region. Communication's our #1 challenge. So the fact that we have gotten together and we're starting to talk about that is going to mitigate that, the largest challenge that we have. Most of the departments, whether it be fire, rescue, police, don't necessarily talk on the same stuff. We try to do the best integration. The federal partners don't necessarily talk to the local partners, so we're working on ways to make sure that we have that. So that's one of the big things that we have. Joint training to make sure that we have joint protocols in place to standardize the way we respond to different things. To not only, I think from the first responders, we have a pretty good dialogue going, but it's more to get this group and the politicians and the community leaders involved as well, because they are just as much a part of the first response as we are. So that's a challenge now, is how do we integrate the politicians and the community leaders into that first response, into that training that's going on, because we don't necessarily train that way. One of the things that we've talked about in our group is we have lots of training exercises, but we usually exercise the same muscle every time that we go out there, right? We exercise the tactical portion. And all our SWAT teams and all of our fire and rescue are practiced, but the rest of it we've got to bring up. So that's a challenge that we have. And then also trying to get the cities to work together to correlate your budgets with each other and looking at what each city and municipality is going to buy that will support the whole of the area rather than just your city, right? And again, we don't need cities buying the same things and then having them sit in a warehouse somewhere decaying because nobody's using it. So again, we want to use money the best way possible that will support it. So there's no reason for Portsmouth and Norfolk to buy the same equipment if we can work on something jointly. Mike asked me to talk about some of the recent national events, and obviously you've watched some of it. The one that's not on here that I always bring up as unfortunately a massive failure was the Navy Yard shooting, right? So both of them were abysmal failures on the part of how we responded to the exercise. We didn't coordinate how people were going to show up. We didn't coordinate once people got on scene. We didn't coordinate the social media very well. And so there was lots of misinformation about those, and all of these fell into some form of that. These are interesting because they fall in different types of things. You've got the shooting in Aurora at the movie theater. You've got the Pulse nightclub. You've got San Bernardino and the Navy Yard, and they're all different in the way that the things that were responded. So again, I go back. What do we need to get in there to train? We need to make sure that the hospitals are part of our training. We need to make sure that from our standpoint and mine, and I've said this to Senator Warner's office, was once we start into an investigation, what's going to be shared to the politicians and to the locals may make some people upset. And so we need to train people now that there are going to be times as we move on to investigations that we're going to ask certain people, non-law enforcement, to walk out of the room. And so, and I know, Mayor, that's going to be a tough thing because you've got a constituency you got to answer to, and that we're going to, but we want to make sure that we're getting you the most information as possible, but there's going to be time. So again, you've got to be part of that training. This committee's got to be part of the training of, okay, when do I kick people out? How do we move over here? How do we get our joint message out there? So my public affairs person is working with other public affairs, not just with first responders and law enforcement, but with some of the city managers as well in their offices and your offices to make sure that we train together to make sure we get our message out together. So that's something that we want to do. So. And then also continuing our education and community outreach. So I know each of us cities has citizens academies and things that we do with our community leaders, and the FBI. Certainly we get out as much as we can. I will say this, in the different places I've been around the country, and I've spent most of the last 15 years in some type of crisis response, I am very encouraged with the Hampton Roads area. It is one of the closest knit communities that I've seen. The 7 cities work better together than most municipalities I've ever been in. So we're way ahead than other places I've seen. So I think this is a great step forward for us as well.
So back in June, the 20th and 21st of June, we had this joint counterterrorism awareness workshop sponsored by our partners in Chesapeake. We brought in public safety agencies from across the region. This workshop was sponsored by the National Counterterrorism Center, the Department of Homeland Security, and the FBI. It was scenario-based, and it involved multiple attacks in multiple jurisdictions with multiple methodologies. In other words, complex, coordinated terrorist attacks. Large-scale. The workshop was designed to stretch our resources, stretch our capacity to deal with many different large-scale events, incidents across the region. We had to work on a fully integrated response. You heard Martin talk a bit about that. Several of these events would have taxed the region on their own accord. When you're talking about an active shooter event at an arena or a ballpark, a major festival with a vehicle ramming into the crowd, like we've seen a lot in Europe, for example. Those types of things. So when you get to the lessons learned by having these types of trainings where you really do stretch yourself and think about the what if scenarios and how we as a region would respond to that, you think about the system strain. That became evident very early, because what typically happens is one of our agencies, one of our cities gets a major event. The first thing we do is call for help for one of our neighboring cities, right? So we respond to that. Sometimes we over-respond to that, as Martin talked about, and then the next event happens and we're a little short-sighted at times. So we've got to really learn and be able to methodically have command and control across these events. Communication, we talked about that being very, very important as agencies ran out of resources very, very quickly in this process. Another lesson learned was no one group really is able to come together as a region and make those resourcing decisions quickly across our region. That whole command, control, coordination of being able to respond to these types of events. So we're trying to learn. We can apply lessons learned that we look at across the Homeland Security and the emergency management spectrum that we can apply to these types of events, and that's very helpful. So some outcomes that we are looking to address. Resourcing lists to include not only hard assets, public safety based hard assets, but things such as interpreters, being able to have quickly deal with victims and get that intel from those victims early on in a scene. Social workers, all of those types of resourcing events. We are typically, I think, as public safety agencies, we're really do a great job initially in the response phase. It's that aftermath phase that sometimes we don't, as Martin alluded to, we don't stretch ourselves enough there sometimes in those recovery efforts. So those are some lessons that we need to work on. Establishing cross-training opportunities, not only for all of our public safety agencies, but across our spectrum. There's going to be some long-term opportunity to engage and train other parts of our organizations. When you think about IT, the work that's done in GIS, when we can use GIS to layer where our resourcing capabilities are, how that applies to the events and where they are, so on and so forth. Hospitals, Martin talked about that, making sure we have our city leadership engaged with us. So I think the future is bright in what we're trying to accomplish as a public safety consortium, if you will, to build on our existing strengths to further enhance our readiness, posture, and coordination throughout our region. I think we've just scratched the surface of the capabilities of our people. That is the main thing that you all have going for you, is the men and women in your organizations, not only in public safety but across the spectrum, really do care about this to be able to deliver that service to your citizens. Thank you very much.
Okay, so you've heard a lot about what's going on and what we're trying to do as far as coordinating all of this stuff and trying to make sure that we can effectively respond in what is really a very complicated environment. You've got 7 independent cities, you've got counties, you've got towns, you've got multiple agencies, state, local, federal, you've got a huge defense industrial base, and across all of those things, we have to be able to coordinate a response and coordinate it on a lot of different levels. So one of the things we've been looking at and talking about with the group is this idea of a common operating picture. This idea that we can see in each other's operation centers, in each other's EOCs, what is going on, not just within our jurisdictions, but regionally. In other words, a map that feeds live data. It feeds our traffic data, it feeds our calls for service data, it tracks some of our electrical flows, it tracks some of our utility flows. It's layered. It's layered in such a way that we can see what's going on at any moment in being able to make better decisions on how resources get allocated based on what we see. We've attempted this a couple of times in my career in public safety. We have not gotten there yet. So Norfolk has partnered with a group called Cordillera Applications. This is a group that has done a ton of work, and Steve, Martin, and Bob were on a conference call with me to talk to them a couple of days ago. What they're going to do is come in and host and facilitate a 3-day working session to examine solutions to urban command and control, coordinated response frameworks, and a flow mapping of the region. In other words, how are things moving in and out? Not just people, but cargo, electricity, all of that. The idea is that we will take this data and try to develop an implementation plan that will get us from where we are right now further down the road, and they've got some key partnerships with other federal agencies that we're hoping that we'll be able to leverage and be able to bring that in and develop this holistic look. They are currently working with NATO, Allied Command Transformation, which we're well familiar with. They're working with the British Police Service, the FBI, and they're also doing some similar work with the Atlanta PD. Next steps, we're going to continue with this regional resource mapping. We are going to get a catalog together that every public safety agency has so we know where things are, we know how to get a hold of them, we know how to activate if we should need it. Once we get that list, we're going to break into subgroups, start managing it from that way. We'll deliver the Cordillera Applications Group seminar to the region and report out to the city managers, and that's about it. Questions?
I don't have questions, but Mike and Steve, Martin and Bob, thank you. When this council decided to elevate Chief Goldsmith to the Deputy City Manager, this was the task that we gave him. And Mike, you have exceeded in short time what we've asked you to take this on as a responsibility to better have collaboration with our federal partners in our sister cities and to better coordinate our resources to make sure we aren't duplicating efforts. Who has command if there's a active shooter or man-made or natural disaster? We will probably be the first team to respond, Team Norfolk, but at some point that responsibility has to be transferred over to the federal authorities. We do have the majority of the assets, the federal assets here in the city of Norfolk, but we do recognize that Virginia Beach and Chesapeake and others had a similar. So we're very grateful, very thankful for this effort. And I don't know if there are additional comments or questions. Mr. Riddick.
Yeah. With our port and the number of containers that we have, somewhere in the last few months, I read that the Trump administration was going to stop paying for inspection of these containers. Was that just a proposal, or is that a reality? And if so, what do we do to make sure that because we have containers coming in by rail, they're coming in by sea, and we store a lot of containers. So.
Yeah, it is disappointing if that funding goes away because that will have some impact on us and our Homeland Security posture. However, with that being said, Customs and Border Patrol has a robust scanning program that is independent of the funding that President Trump was talking about. We can certainly speak with Martin and talk to our federal partners about how we might bolster that if that funding goes away. There are some things we can do that we can talk about at a later date. But I feel confident the CBP is going to be able to do their job.
And Mr. Riddick, it was a proposal by the president. However, when Winter and I went to Washington to meet with our federal delegation, we made it very clear that funding, cutting that funding to police and inspect our containers would be harmful and detrimental to the city of Norfolk. They assured us that they would try everything in their power to preserve that funding and not to have those cuts. Andrea.
We talk a lot about this uses technology, and one of the things that we're working on, and we look at it from an economic development perspective, but there's a real public safety perspective, is this regional fiber ring to hook all of our cities together so that you can have access in a safe and secure way to share this information. So as we move forward on this, and we'll have a Go Virginia grant application. But regardless of that, I think we, as a city and as a region, need to support this for public safety as well, so.
Ms. Graves?
In all of what you're talking about, I just thought about something that, just very local to us, but that's the Tide Park. Do we have, do we have like a plan, might be too simple of a word, but do we have a plan in the event that there is some kind of active shooter or bomb threat or something or another at a baseball game?
That's exactly the kind of things these guys are playing out, the scenarios they're playing out. And I think that the scenario in Chesapeake was multiple of those beds. So where we've got our ballpark, others have arenas, we've all got these venues. And so by having everybody work together and say, all right, what would happen at this place, we can complement each other and reinforce each other. And it's a very real concern.
And Ms. Graves, one of the tasks that we asked Mike Goldsmith is to make sure that Team Norfolk, those individuals who are working those events, how they usher people to safe places, and so that's part of the training. And part of the training that Doug has shared with me is what I can say and what I can't say. If it's a man-made or a national disaster, what's my role as mayor? You don't have to worry about me, getting involved in the investigation. If you say leave the room, I'm out of the room. But that's part of, Harbor, even one of our schools. And so this is part of the task. We have the airport. The regional airport is in the city of Norfolk. We have the port, as Mr. Riddick mentioned. We have Naval Station Norfolk. We have NATO. We have so many it's not if, it's just when something will happen. And so we just want to be prepared and build these contingencies. Go ahead, sir. I'm sorry.
I think to your question though is, yes, I think each of the local police departments and first responders have those, at least that's what I have seen. So, take the incident last night in Portsmouth, right? So they had a shooter in a barricade situation, and that's one of probably 3 in the last 3 months that we've had in this area, right? We had one up in York County, we had this one, you've had 2 here, you've had, one in Virginia Beach. So, from my standpoint, what we see is that each of the municipalities has handled it without any real assistance. So, every time something like that happens, I'm notified. I usually call the chief. I was on the phone with Chief Chapman last night in Portsmouth, waiting to see if they needed additional help. Most of them don't, so because they all have a very good plan in place already. So I would say yes, you have that here as well.
Okay, so again, thank you very much. I think that we have something for you before you leave.
Sir, I want to thank.
Yep. So what we have is something from the city of Norfolk. Appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
I'm hoping their mayors will show me as much love.
Oh, no. Mike, you can't leave. Don't try. Get back over here. No, I don't know what you. Come on back here.
So, Mayor, there was intentional symbolism in, frankly, having these folks from the other communities and the FBI come make that presentation. Mike will pay that back in the other communities because this really is a regional effort. When you look at those 4 men, you've got a former fire chief, a former police chief, a former commanding officer from NAS Oceana, and obviously the field office.
And Doug, again, when we decide when this council decided to move Mike to deputy city manager, we wanted that collaboration, coordination, because those resources are out there, but they were operating independently. 7 municipalities operating very independently about something that's very real that could affect the whole region. And so we're very proud and very grateful that you responded and that Mike is actually doing the work that we assigned. So we really appreciate it.
Lots more to
Mr. Riddick.
come.
Yeah, but one of the things that I mentioned to Mike while we were on our recess, and I'm serious about this, is that at first I thought about, metal detectors of people coming to the council chambers, but then that would be kind of expensive. But anybody who goes in scope of Chrysler Hall is one. And I want to see anybody that comes in our chambers, they want. We certain people who have a license to carry a gun, that's fine. But I would have got a gun out there, you know. And I'm serious, and I think we need to start that right away, because people have emotions, and sometimes their emotions just carry them, you know, over the edge. And I really think that, you know, and with the rapid fire of these automatic weapons,
Magazines.
it could take us all out.
Great point. We heard you.
I'm
No,
serious.
we heard you. We're taking a hard look at the building,
Yeah.
and particularly access to the 9th, 10th, 11th floors. And you want to balance that access to government with the realities of this world we're in today. We've gotta be
Because we
safe.
have had incidents where, after city council meetings, people have wandered up here to the 10th floor. We may come back just to pick something up, and people are on this floor.
Well, we have implemented some changes you probably haven't seen. What I would say to anybody here is if you are ever uncomfortable, that we have folks that are ready to step in at any minute, just make me aware of that, or anybody that's
Manager, you
close
got
to you.
20 minutes, sir.
George Homewood, non-conforming lot process. Where are you, bud?
He actually looked shocked there for a
I know,
minute.
George has been bumped at least twice.
I was told I was bumped tonight.
Yeah,
Almost.
Got your running shoes on.
it was.
Okay, be very, very quick. We want to talk to you a little bit about some improvements we've made to the non-standard lot process and the direction we're headed going forward. This is not intended to be the last time we have a conversation about this, but I know that some of you have had some of your constituents that have expressed some concerns. So we want to make sure that you understand what the process is and why and what we're doing to try to make it better. So background, non-standard lots are lots that are, we sometimes refer to them as narrow lots. So they are have less than the lot width that is prescribed by the zoning ordinance. Typically, you know, an awful lot of the city for single family is zoned to require a 50-foot lot. So anything that's 49 feet and less is a non-standard lot. This only applies to single-family detached and to new homes. It does not apply to renovations. It doesn't apply to any of those kind of rebuild types of situations, only to new. There are two ways to comply. The first is through a special exception, and that used to be the only way to comply. And quite frankly, a predecessor city council decided that they really wanted to have an alternative to looking at these things at all of their meetings. And so the alternative is what we call a zoning certificate, which is an administrative process. And at the end of which time, if the person is not satisfied, they still have the opportunity to ask for a special exception and come to the Planning Commission and City Council. This process has also been applied contractually as well as in some parts of code to properties that are acquired from the city. When you all sell land, very often it comes with the requirement, either from the code or the contract of sale, that it go through the city's design process. And again, only the single family lots. Now, sometimes city property is sold for other purposes, and often that also goes through a design process, but that goes through the Architectural Review Board. This is not an ARB process. The current process is rather complicated and cumbersome. I don't intend for you to read the flow chart there, other than to notice it's got an awful lot of boxes and an awful lot of steps. At the bottom, the key to this is that the current process is extremely high touch. And we are, quite frankly, not staffed at the level that we need to be to continue to do that high touch on every single application that comes in and meet our customer service goals. And so that's why we want to, I should say, the process, I don't think anybody doubts the results of the process. We're getting good product from it. It's just, it's taking a longer time than it should. So what we're trying to do now is create some process improvements, and do that now. And then with the new zoning ordinance, we want to effect additional process improvements. So what we're trying to do is focus on the parcels that are the most important. And so, quite frankly, those parts of the city that are in the traditional character district, where you have the forms that are from the streetcar suburb era of the city, are the areas where building the modern suburban style house of today sticks out most like a sore thumb. And so those are the areas where we think that, quite frankly, we should pay more attention. And if we have to try to manage the workload, that's where we pay our attention, and relatively less attention to some of the other areas. It's not that we're not going to pay. It's not that we're paying no attention, but it's essentially using a magnifying glass as opposed to a microscope. And so we'll continue to look at the suburban character district, continue to look at lots that are 49 feet as opposed to 30 feet, but we're going to try to give them a little bit less of a stiff review, and more based on what could be built as a matter of right on those properties, since many of them are very close to that in any case. Just so, from a personnel standpoint, our zoning administrator, Mr. Tahan, is going to, now has the lead on anything that is in the suburban character district, and he is involved, along with Mr. Cooper and Mr. Straley, on looking and reviewing all these. Since it's in the zoning ordinance, it's ultimately the zoning administrator who has the responsibility for implementation. We're also now sending out, when we do the buildable lot letters, which people apply for to decide whether a lot can be built upon, and there's that's a discussion for a whole other day as to what's in all that. We are now providing the form and design criteria that apply to that character district in the buildable lot letter, so that there aren't any surprises. Some of the problems we deal with is that people who do these, sometimes this is the first project they're doing in the city of Norfolk, and they're surprised. And that's a bit of an issue for us as well as for them, and we want to avoid that sort of thing. We're also going to have checklists and revised brochure in place by the end of this week, and we'll get a copy to you. So the goal is to take that rather complicated org chart or wiring diagram of how the process works, and reduce this number of steps, and in so doing reduce the amount of time that it takes. Currently it takes at least 5 weeks, and that's actual review time. So if somebody submits something and gets comments back, the time from comments to resubmitting isn't counted in that 5 weeks. And we want to turn it around in 2 weeks. That's our customer service goal for what we do in planning, and we want this process to meet that goal as well. In the new zoning ordinance, we're proposing even more process improvements. The new ordinance, I hope all of you are aware by now, is a form-focused ordinance. So an awful lot of the districts will have form standards that will automatically give a certain amount of this sort of guidance that we do in the narrow lot. Only it will apply everywhere in the city, not just narrow lots, but on all the lots. So those basic form standards will provide the basis for most of the design and form review that we're going to do. For non-standard lots in the coastal and the traditional and suburban, we will have some enhanced form standards, and they will apply depending on the width of lots. So 50 feet or wider, the basic form standards apply everywhere, though we are building in a 10% variation, so 49 feet will be the same as 50 feet, and 48 feet will be the same as 50 feet going forward. So that, because I can't stand out and tell you the difference between a 49-foot lot and a 50-foot lot, And so we think that that's kind of a ridiculous thing to draw a line in the sand on. From 49
What happens
to,
about the line in the sand at 48? What about if 48 becomes the new line in the sand?
well, 50 now.
I'm just saying, you know, someplace somebody's got to draw a line in the sand.
There's going to be a line, so that's why we're doing a plus or minus 10%.
The last one we voted on that was controversial in Ocean View was the 49.5-foot one.
I'm just saying, you know, at some point, we've got to figure out what we're going to allow. And if everybody knows we're going to allow 48, then somebody's going to come in with 47 and say, well, for God's sake, it's only a foot.
Right. But these are not lots that are being created for the most part. These are lots that are out there and exist, and
Right,
many of them for well over 100 years.
I understand.
So then in the 49 to 37.5 foot, again, it's going to strictly be a form standard, although some enhanced form standards. And then only when we get down below 37.5 feet will we get moving into the more high-touch zoning certificate approach. The advantage that, or the difference between the enhanced form standards and the zoning certificate is that the zoning certificate is entirely context-based. So the first thing you do is you go out and you walk the street and you figure out what everything on the street looks like, whereas the enhanced standards are going to be character district-based, and so will be a lot more generic and won't require customizing a home to a particular site. This is our next steps, and I'll be glad to answer any questions you got.
All right. George, thanks, bud. Appreciate your patience these last couple meetings. Kim, if you don't mind throwing up the retreat agenda, I can do this quickly. I want to also just make a couple of agenda comments to you. Public hearing item 1, Lester Avenue was continued from last meeting. We've got a letter from the Navy. You all seen this of no opposition. However, staff is still recommending denial because it's not in line with Plan Norfolk 2030. It's a density issue. That letter is in y'all's boxes. And then R2, you remember the lease of Brook Avenue was continued from last meeting. There's a memo that was in y'all's boxes that I hope answered some questions, and just want to make sure everybody saw that. In terms of the retreat, you will get an electronic version of your notebooks Thursday night. It'll have all the information ahead of time, which will allow you to spend Thursday through the weekend sort of reviewing that. And then Monday, you'll have a binder at your place at the Attics with all that information in it, so you don't have to thumb through that. And just in terms of running you through really quickly, we'll come in, do exactly what you expect. Sort of give an overview of what we're going to try to accomplish in the next day and a half. Give you all about 45 minutes, 5 minutes each, to just say what y'all's hopes and desires and what it is that you hope to accomplish out of the retreat. John Martin will come in. You remember the vision and the brand statement, and one of the things we talked a lot about, sort of this idea of one Norfolk and a welcoming community and a big tent, and we've incorporated those things into that placemat and really shrunk that down and calling it the Norfolk story. And I think you'll really like what you're going to see there. And I think that's some good conversation to kick all of this off. Then we get into some of the just meat that we got to give context to, and we got to give you the fiscal context of how do we look, how's the year end look, what's that looking like, and what's that 10-year forecast look like, what's the framework from a fiscal perspective. Gonna give you a straw man as a dashboard, and frankly, it's that thing we talked about. I think I've told you all, if you give me if I give you 5 pages worth of stuff that we're gonna track day in and day out, we end up not paying attention to any of it. We're gonna give you that 1 page of things that we think you ought to be using to hold us accountable, and then we'll give to you all. And look at that, Thursday through the weekend, and make sure that it starts to address the things that you want to address. So we'll have some conversation there. We'll get into sort of what we're calling engagement. We'll start with civic engagement, which will be a piece of a little bit more conversation around starting with the budgeting process and how the community is going to be able to get involved here in the fall in that budget process. And then get into what I call sort of institutional engagement, which is boards and commissions. I've heard a lot from you that you want to have some conversation about that process, and they'll give you an opportunity to do that. Thelma will come in and give you your straw man on the initial, you'll see this Thursday, of the legislative packet, and give us a chance to talk through that. And then we'll have what we're calling council engagement, which is, y'all have got some issues that I've heard sort of come up of how you do business and different things that have come up on your plates, and frankly, that's going to be your time to talk about you all, yourselves, and some of how you work and those sorts of things. and then we'll have at this point, we don't anticipate needing a closed session, but if we do, we've got that penciled in for Monday night, but we'll break and have some social time, first at the Attics and then the dinner afterwards. And then Kim, if you can shoot to day two. Day two is really getting into your priorities. And so we're going to lay out a tool. I'm going to lay out a tool for you of sort of what is what I would call the current state of housing, education, safety, your three priorities. And we're going to do a little work to try to say, what is it? What do you want those things to look like? What's the future state of each of those items? And we'll talk about each. We've got specific things to talk about with public safety. Been some conversation among yourselves about animal care. So we've got a presentation on animal care. We've got a follow-up on public safety. Y'all talked a lot about code enforcement. And so we're going to make a presentation to you, but give you a chance to have some conversation there. Then we'll pause and talk about that idea of, all right, so what is public safety? What is it you want it to look like and be in Norfolk? Jump into education and really going to focus on the funding formula. And we think we've got a pretty interesting proposal for you to contemplate that starts to lay out how a funding formula would work both on the operating side and the capital side. And I think that'll be thought-provoking and interesting for you. We'll also talk about sort of what does education look like for you all as a priority. Then we'll get into housing, and remember we had the whole conversation about strengthening neighborhoods and what does that look like, and we've got a pilot program we want to do in a couple of neighborhoods, and we haven't been able to reach exact consensus on what those neighborhoods should be. So we figured we'll go ahead and get into that in the retreat and see if we can't resolve that. And then we'll sort of wrap up the retreat over lunch, and then if you all have other stuff that you council interests and things that are just on your mind that you want to talk about as a group, we can do that as long as you want to do it. So we've got the end of the retreat laid out for that. I do know the mayor's scheduling another community meeting for St. Paul's, in this case the businesses in St. Paul's for 3:30 that afternoon, but that gives us plenty of time to lead into that.
And I didn't see the evaluation of the one.
So we that's not on the plate at this point.
It'll be up there.
So here's what I would argue is separate them.
You don't know how we feel about you.
I know that, but I would tell you, do it on a work set. Separate it. I mean, do it the next Monday if you want.
Yeah, I want to do it like we do it. Always do it at the retreat.
All right.
So and devote enough time to it. So
Okay.
let's don't change that.
That's why I'm showing it to you. So this is a chance to. So when have you historically done it? At the beginning or the end?
No, as after right at the end.
At the end.
Tuesday,
right,
number 10.
Right, number 10.
All right.
X marks the spot.
All right.
So I would just ask that when we did our interviews for city manager, one of the things we talked about was having an evaluation form.
Right.
So I'm finding that Monday would be a little early for us to do that. I appreciate, Paul, that this is important for us to do.
We have an attorney, we have a clerk.
Right, and we
we
have
have an
no
auditor.
evaluation form.
Yeah. You say form?
I'm saying that we need to have some kind of structured
Framework.
Yes, and we
Framework
talked
for
about that with Doug
Yeah.
when he interviewed.
Yeah.
And I feel that he deserves
I
that,
don't wanna
as
change
do Bernard and our other
I don't want to
folks.
change it.
So I
Grace?
thought maybe Kenny and some of us could work on such a form. I think there need to be some benchmarks
Yeah.
that we're looking at.
Well, here's the thing, I think we come up with these ideas and we say we need to do it and nobody ever does it. And then we come back to a place where we have to do it and nothing has been done,
Right.
as we are right now. I think that from the time we hired Doug up until this point is not necessarily been enough time to put together something, because nothing has been done. So I think keeping it the way it has been this year, and then making it a priority of somebody's,
Right.
if it's Kenny and a body of one or two, probably just one to keep it from being a public meeting, then it, and then bringing that back, to us in closed session because it's personnel, and having us discuss how we want to do it and put in a formal, but I don't think we should skip it all together in lieu of, we said we were going to do something different, and we haven't done anything to get to anything different, and then we'll look up next year in September and we'll be having the same conversation.
Can I
and
just
we
ask real
wouldn't
quick?
have
So
had-
I'm confused about why we just hired Doug. Why would we
Well, all the
evaluate
rest of
him?
the other.
We got
I understand
four or
that.
five.
No, I
we got
understand that,
other
but
people.
why,
I think Doug is
I would
excluded.
sure that we exclude Doug,
Yeah, let's do it
Yeah.
Tuesday.
because we just made our decision, that was his evaluation
But it
already.
still be some, it still,
We can get you in
it could be some
January.
things about
Yeah.
his
So,
interaction that
Tuesday,
we
what-
need to
Okay.
talk about. I mean,
Tuesday, what
it's
time,
it's
Mr.
not
Riddick?
perfect.
What time we have it at Tuesday?
And
I won't disagree with that.
1 o'clock good for you?
1 o'clock?
Yeah,
got one
whatever,
more
yeah.
thing.
Tuesday at 1 o'clock.
And I got one more
Yes,
thing on
Ms.
that.
Graves.
We have a lot to talk about in 10 minutes. We have strategic in like 3 different places or 2 different places. And we have like 20-minute time, 10 and 20-minute time frames to talk about stuff that we label as strategic. I don't like it when we cram in
Right.
a bunch of stuff and we don't get to really have meaningful conversation because we've crammed in so many different things. I mean, I think part of the reason why we went to doing like a mini retreat in between the retreat was so we could get to some of those things that we didn't necessarily get to in the retreat, or we don't get to in our work sessions or whatever. But you got 10 minutes for
Animal care, we can do that here one day.
safety. I mean, we can.
Yeah, we can
It's
do
not
that here.
necessarily
That's
There
not-
really isn't an overarching thing.
It's
Right.
nothing, I mean, you
for
can take
the
that out.
retreat.
For-
That's
But it's not.
30
overarching.
minutes of time that, I mean, I don't
I'm
know.
kind
I
of
just think
thinking-
there's a lot of strategic stuff there that's only allotted 10 minutes, and I don't know how you can be strategic in 10 minutes.
I'm kind of thinking overview and retreat goals. It seems like we've got a lot of strategy at other times to allow an hour and a half for that. Is that right? Or I guess it's 45 minutes,
Mhm.
opening thoughts.
We can take the animal care out and.
And then you want us to scarf down lunch in 15 minutes.
All right, so Doug, we,
You gotta rearrange that, man.
Mr. Riddick, let's get upstairs and
I
we'll
just want-
we'll get something back out to you.
I mean, if we're gonna take animal care out, that's fine.
No,
I think it's
we're not,
important.
well, we're not gonna take it out
It
because
is,
we
but we
have
can put it in a, we
But
can
animal
put it in
care,
another
we can
session.
do that.
We can put it
We
in
do
a
that here.
session on the first Tuesday.
Yeah,
We'll-
it's
we'll-
not an
we can.
overarching, it's not
Yeah.
policy goals.
Yeah.
Well, it may be policy, depends on what comes
But
out of it.
I think some of this agenda though was created based off of council members' concerns, and
Exactly.
Andrea and Kenny both asked for animal care to be discussed. I didn't ask for it, but they did at the
Right,
retreat.
but
There's other things on there that other council members have asked for that's on the agenda. So, I mean,
But was that the most important thing that you asked for? It can't be. I mean, not the animals are not important, but is that?
Right.
Whether it's at the retreat or
Let's get
anytime.
upstairs.
I
Yeah.
think I can tweak
We're
this
tweaking-
thing.
we're
You're losing
tweaking.
control, man. You're losing control.
I'm upstairs. I'm upstairs, buddy.
The only thing that's missing up there is the dog and pony show.
Okay, all right.